stare at my father's Instagram post, my fingers trembling against the phone screen. 247 comments already, each one a digital knife twisting deeper into my gut. When one daughter makes you proud and the other one makes noise. Blessed one and all family life. The post shows Brooke holding her acceptance letter to Stanford, beaming next to our father. The second photo is me at my band rehearsal, caught mid-song with my mouth open, eyes closed, deliberately unflattering. I'm Adelaide, the twin who makes noise. Delete it, I whisper, but the words barely escape my throat. The grand dining room suddenly feels airless, despite the cathedral ceilings and expensive art pieces Mother loves so much. Father adjusts his tie, not bothering to look up from his tablet. It's a celebration post for Brooke's achievement. The contrast makes her success more impressive. The contrast? My voice cracks. You mean humiliating me? Adelaide, darling, Mother interjects, arranging flowers in a crystal vase like nothing's wrong. You're being dramatic. It's just social media. Brooke stands in the doorway, her acceptance letter crumpled slightly in her grip. Dad, maybe Adelaide should focus more on her grades and less on that garage band nonsense, Father cuts her off. Then perhaps I'd have something worth posting about both my daughters. The room spins slightly. I grip the edge of the mahogany table, my knuckles white against the polished wood. 2 decades of these little cuts, these casual cruelties dressed up as parental concern. Each one catalogued, filed away, feeding something dark and hungry inside me. I have a gig tonight, I say, my voice steadier than I feel. At the basement. Absolutely not. Father finally looks up, his steel grey eyes narrowing. You have calculus homework to complete. Your last test score was embarrassing. I got an 87. Exactly my point. Brooke got a 98. Brooke shifts uncomfortably. Dad, that's not fair. Life isn't fair, sweetheart. That's why we push ourselves to excel. He turns back to me. No gig. End of discussion. I pull out my phone again, open Instagram. My hands aren't shaking anymore. Fine. Then I'll just share some interesting stories about how you acquired Thompson Tech last year. I'm sure your followers would love to hear about those late-night meetings with the SEC investigators. The room goes deadly quiet. Mother's flower arrangement crashes to the floor, water seeping into the Persian rug. Father's face drains of color, then floods red. Where did you hear about that? His voice is dangerous, low. I hear lots of things, I say, surprising myself with how calm I sound. Maybe if you spent less time trying to control my life and more time covering your tracks, I wouldn't know about the offshore accounts either. Brooke gasps. Mother starts gathering broken glass, her movements frantic. Father stands slowly, his 6'2" frame casting a shadow across the table. You're grounded, indefinitely. Hand over your phone. I take a step back, clutching my phone tighter. No. Adelaide. Touch my phone, and tomorrow morning your board members get an interesting email. I've already set it up. I haven't, but he doesn't know that. I'm playing tonight's gig, and you're going to delete that Instagram post. We stare at each other across the dining room. For the first time in my life, I see something new in his eyes. Fear. You wouldn't dare, he says, but there's uncertainty in his voice. Try me. I turn to leave, then pause. Oh, and Dad, next time you want to post about your daughters, remember, I'm not just noise. I'm an echo. Everything you do comes back eventually. I walk out, leaving behind shattered glass, spilled water, and the first cracks in my father's perfect world. Brooke catches my eye as I pass, and for a moment, I see something like admiration in my twin's face. This isn't just about music anymore. This is about payback, and I'm just getting started. The stack of textbooks lands on my desk with a thunderous slam. Advanced calculus, molecular biology, economic theory. Father towers over me, his shadow stretching across my bedroom wall like a prison bar. Your new study schedule, he says, sliding a color-coded spreadsheet toward me. 6 hours daily, monitored through the webcam. I've already cancelled your band practices for the next month. I scan the schedule, my throat tightening. This leaves no time for... That's the point. He taps the spreadsheet with one manicured finger. You want to play games with me? Let's play. I can make your life very difficult, Adelaide. The threat hangs between us like poison gas. I think of my guitar, hidden at Ethan's house after last night's gig. At least he can't take that away. What about my college applications? I ask, keeping my voice steady. Music programs require performance submissions. Already handled. I've submitted applications to business schools. Your sister's helping with the essays. My head snaps up. Brooke wouldn't. Already has. He pulls out his phone, shows me an email. There's Brooke's name, attached to perfectly crafted personal statements about my passionate interest in corporate finance. The betrayal hits like a physical blow. After last night, I thought. But of course, perfect Brooke, Daddy's perfect puppet. You can't force me to attend. I can cut off your trust fund, your car, your phone, your freedom. He leans closer, voice dropping to a whisper. And if you ever threaten me with my business dealings again, I'll make sure every music venue in this city knows not to book you. Money talks, sweetheart, and I have all of it. A knock at the door makes us both turn. Brooke stands there, pale and rigid. Dad, Mom needs you downstairs. Something about the charity gala guest list. He straightens, adjusts his tie. Remember our chat, Adelaide. 6 hours daily, starting now. The moment he's gone, Brooke rushes in, closing the door. Addie, I'm so sorry. He made me. Save it. I stand, shoving the textbooks aside. You chose your side. No, listen. She grabs my arm, her fingers trembling. The essays, they're terrible, deliberately terrible, full of red flags no admission officer would touch. I made sure... I freeze. What? I'm playing both sides, she whispers, eyes darting to the door. Dad's watching you, but he trusts me completely. I can help if you let me. Before I can respond, we hear footsteps. Brooke jumps back, raising her voice. So, yes, Adelaide, I really think you should focus on your studies. It's for the best. Mother appears in the doorway, her perfect smile stretched too tight. Girls, your father wants everyone dressed for dinner. The Thompsons are coming over. The Thompsons, the family whose tech company father acquired last year. My pulse quickens. Actually, I say, I'm not feeling well, might skip dinner. Nonsense, Mother chirps. Mr. Thompson specifically asked about you. Something about his son being interested in local musicians. I catch Brooke's subtle headshake, but it's too late. Father materializes behind Mother, his expression thunderous. Adelaide will join us, he says. Properly dressed, properly behaved. No discussion of her hobby. Later, as I change into an appropriate dinner dress, I find a note slipped under my door. Brooke's handwriting. Mr. Thompson's son, Jamie, knows things about the acquisition. Dad's nervous. Be careful. I stare at the note, pieces clicking into place. Father's insistence on my presence, his sudden escalation of control. He's not just punishing me. He's scared of what I might learn. I tuck the note away, a cold smile forming. He wants to play games? Fine. But he forgot something crucial. In chess, the pawn that reaches the other side becomes the most powerful piece on the board. Tonight, I'll play the perfect daughter. I'll smile, make small talk, pretend to be interested in Jamie Thompson's stories. And I'll listen. Very, very carefully. Because Father's right about one thing. Money talks. But secrets scream. Jamie Thompson's USB drive feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds in my pocket. 3 hours of forced dinner conversation worth every excruciating minute for this tiny piece of plastic that could destroy my father. He ruined us, Jamie had whispered during our carefully orchestrated kitchen encounter. Your father didn't just buy our company, he orchestrated its collapse. Hundreds of people lost everything. Now, at 3 a.m, I sit cross-legged on my bedroom floor, laptop glowing with damning evidence. Emails, financial records, board meeting recordings, a systematic dismantling of lives for profit. A soft knock startles me. Brooke slips in, still wearing her dinner dress. Did Jamie come through? I nod, unable to speak. She sits beside me, scanning the documents. Oh God, she whispers. The pension fund. Dad liquidated their entire retirement fund before the acquisition. 312 employees, I say. Some had worked there 30 years. Mr. Thompson's heart attack last spring. Wasn't just stress. I close the laptop, feeling sick. This is worse than we thought, Brooke. This isn't just about me anymore. She grabs my hand. We need to be careful. Dad's getting suspicious. I heard him on the phone earlier, hiring private investigators. Let him. I squeeze her hand back. I'm done being careful. Adelaide. A floorboard creaks outside my door. We freeze. Footsteps pause, then continue down the hall. Mother's sleeping pills aren't working as well lately, Brooke whispers. She knows something's coming. I heard her crying in the garden yesterday. The knowledge should satisfy me, but it just adds to the weight in my chest. Do you ever wonder if we're becoming just like him? Plotting revenge? Keeping secrets? No, Brooke says firmly. We're nothing like him. We're trying to make things right. My phone buzzes. Ethan. The studio's booked for tomorrow. Ryan's got the lyrics ready. You're really going to do this? Put it all in a song? Not directly, but people will know. The right people will understand exactly what I'm singing about. Brooke stands, smoothing her dress. Dad's hosting the charity gala next week. Half the tech industry will be there. If you're going to make a move, that's too soon. We need more time to... We don't have more time. She pulls out her phone, shows me an email. Dad's arranging to have you sent to a boarding school in Switzerland for intensive academic rehabilitation. The room spins. He can't. He can. The paperwork's already being processed. You have 7 days, Addie. 7 days to destroy a man who spent decades building his empire. 7 days to expose truths that could tear apart not just our family, but an entire industry. Help me, I whisper. Brooke's eyes widen. It's the first time I've ever asked her directly. Everything, she says. I'll tell you everything I know about his operations. But Addie, her voice cracks, promise me something. What? When this is over, when he's ruined, promise we'll still be sisters. The USB drive burns in my pocket. Somewhere upstairs, our father sleeps, probably dreaming of new empires to build, new lives to destroy. Our mother paces, swallowing pills that don't quite drown her conscience. And here we are, 2 daughters plotting in darkness, trying to save ourselves from becoming either of them. I promise, I say, and mean it more than anything I've ever said. Brooke hugs me fiercely, then pulls back. The Thompson acquisition records are just the beginning. Wait until you hear about the Singapore deal. She starts talking, and I start typing, and somewhere in the pre-dawn darkness, a plan takes shape. Not just revenge anymore, but revolution. Not just my voice, but the voices of hundreds who lost everything to my father's ambition. 7 days to change everything. The countdown begins now. I open a new document and start composing. Not song lyrics this time, but a manifesto. A declaration of war. Ready? Brooke asks. I think of Jamie Thompson's haunted eyes, of our mother's pills, of 312 destroyed lives. Ready? The recording studio feels like a confessional booth, dark and intimate. Ethan's fingers hover over the keyboard, while Ryan tunes his guitar, both waiting for my signal. The lyrics we've crafted sit heavy in my hands, every word a bullet aimed at my father's empire. You sure about this? Ryan asks, his calloused fingers pausing on the strings. Once we release it, there's no going back. I think of the Thompson files, of 300 ruined lives. Play it. The melody starts soft, deceptive. My voice joins in, weaving the story of corporate greed through metaphor and innuendo. Anyone who knows the Thompson tech collapse will understand. Anyone who's been crushed by my father's ambition will recognize their own pain. Halfway through the second verse, the studio door opens. Samantha, Brooke's best friend, slips in, her face pale. "Stop," she says. "Adelaide, stop recording, now." Something in her voice makes Ethan kill the track. "Your father's investigators," she says. "They're not just following you. They're tracking everyone. The band, the Thompsons, even me. They showed up at my parents' restaurant this morning, asking questions about our connection to you." My hand starts shaking. "Did they implied they could cause problems with our business permits, health inspections, tax audits." She swallows hard. "Your father's trying to isolate you, Addie. Anyone who helps you becomes a target." Ryan sets down his guitar. "Maybe we should wait." "No." The word comes out sharper than intended. "This is exactly why we have to do this. He can't keep destroying people's lives." "Adelaide." Samantha steps closer, lowering her voice. "There's more. Brooke. She's been admitted to the hospital." The world tilts sideways. "What?" "Anxiety attack. Your mother's telling everyone it's just stress from college applications, but..." She glances at Ethan and Ryan. "Can we talk privately?" In the hallway, Samantha shows me her phone. Text messages from Brooke sent last night. "Dad knows something's coming. He's making threats, not just about Adelaide anymore. Said he'll make sure neither of us ever work in this country if we try to hurt him." "I can't breathe, Sam. I can't." "She's protecting you," Samantha whispers. "Taking the pressure so your father won't look too closely at what you're doing. My sister, my twin, suffering because of my revenge." Back in the studio, Ethan and Ryan are packing up their instruments, their movements careful, deliberate. "We're with you," Ethan says quietly. "But we need to be smart about this. Your father's powerful, but he's also scared. That makes him dangerous." "What about the charity gala?" Ryan suggests. "We're already booked to perform. Perfect platform, captive audience." "And if it backfires, we all go down," Samantha interrupts. "My family's restaurant, their music careers, Brooke's future, then I'll do it alone." The words come out before I can stop them. "Release the song under my name only. Keep everyone else's names off it." "Addie." "No." I pick up the lyrics sheet, start marking changes. "I started this. I'll finish it, but I won't let anyone else pay the price." Ryan grabs my wrist. "You're not doing this alone. Look at what he's already done. Brooke's in the hospital, Samantha's family is being threatened, which is exactly why we can't back down," Ethan says firmly. "Your father's showing his true colors. Every threat, every attack just proves we're right about him." My phone buzzes. A message from an unknown number, a video link. With trembling fingers, I press play. It's security camera footage from Thompson Tech's final board meeting. My father stands at the head of the table, his voice cold. "Either you sell now, or I'll ensure every one of you ends up bankrupt and blacklisted. Your choice." Below the video, "More where this came from. You're not the only one he's hurt. Jamie Thompson, still fighting back. I look at my friends, my allies, their faces determined despite their fear. Think of Brooke in her hospital bed, trying to protect me, even now." "The song needs a new verse," I say finally, "about strength in numbers, about fighting back together." Ryan picks up his guitar. Ethan returns to the keyboard. Samantha pulls out her phone, starting to type. "What are you doing?" I ask her. "Telling your story? Social media's going to light up when this drops." She looks up, fierce and determined. "Your father wants to isolate you. Let's show him how connected you really are." We start recording again. This time, every note feels like a declaration of war. The video hits 1 million views at midnight. I watch the number tick up on my phone screen while sitting in Brooke's hospital room, the steady beep of her heart monitor, keeping time with my racing pulse. Corporate vulture is trending. My voice, my words, my truth, wrapped in metaphors sharp enough to draw blood. The comments section floods with stories from former Thompson Tech employees, each one a fresh wound in my father's armor. Brooke stirs, her hospital gown crinkling. "How bad?" "Bad enough. I show her the screen. Dad's PR team is in damage control, but they can't stop people from connecting the dots. He called again. She touches her throat, where anxiety left its marks. Threatened to expose your involvement with Jamie Thompson. Said he'd make it look like industrial espionage. A nurse passes by, casting a suspicious glance through the window. My father's people, watching even here. I lower my voice. Let him try. I've got... My phone buzzes. Unknown number. The text contains a single video file. It's security footage from our house. Mother in the garden, arguing with father. The timestamp shows last night. The audio is crystal clear. You're destroying this family, Michael. First Adelaide, now Brooke. I'm protecting us. You think I built all this by being soft? You think... I think you're becoming a monster. And I think I should have left when... The crack of his hand against her face echoes through my phone's speaker. Brooke flinches beside me. A second text follows. Your move, Adelaide. How many more people get hurt before you stop? My hands shake so badly, I nearly drop the phone. He's using Mum against us. Addie. Brooke grabs my arm. There's something else. The hospital admission. It wasn't just anxiety. I found documents in Dad's study. About the Singapore deal. Names, dates, proof of... The door opens. Mother stands there, dark glasses hiding what I now know is a bruised face. Adelaide, your father wants to speak with you, now. I'm not... Please. Her voice cracks. Just listen to what he has to say. In the hospital corridor, father waits by the window, his reflection fractured across the glass. He doesn't turn around. Take down the video, he says quietly. End this childish revenge fantasy. Or tomorrow morning, Ryan and Ethan's families receive proof of their involvement in corporate espionage. Samantha's parents' restaurant fails its health inspection. And Brooke, he finally faces me. Well, mental health issues can seriously impact college admissions, can't they? The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, harsh and unforgiving, like his eyes. You'd destroy your own daughter's future. I'm preserving her future. Your little rebellion is what's destroying this family. He steps closer. You have 1 hour to delete everything. Then you're on a plane to Switzerland, non-negotiable. My phone buzzes again. Samantha. Health inspectors just showed up. They're shutting us down. Another message. Ryan. Someone leaked our demo to the press. They're calling it proof of conspiracy. Then Ethan. My dad just lost his job. What's happening? The walls close in. One by one, my father is crushing everyone I care about, just like Thompson Tech, just like every other life he's destroyed. But this time, it's my fault. I look back through the hospital room window. Brooke lies there, pale and fragile, while Mother hovers nearby, both casualties of my war. Tick-tock, Adelaide. Father checks his watch. 57 minutes left. Sometimes surrender is the only way to win. He walks away, leaving me alone in the sterile corridor with an impossible choice. Save everyone I love, or finish what I started. My phone lights up one last time. Jamie Thompson. Don't give up. We knew the cost when we started. So did everyone else. Some things are worth fighting for. Below his message, a link to new documents. The Singapore deal Brooke mentioned. Proof of something bigger, darker than Thompson Tech. I think of Mother's bruised face. Of Brooke in her hospital bed. Of all the lives already broken by my father's ambition. The video has reached 2 million views. Sometimes surrender is the only way to win, he said. But sometimes, the only way to win is to change the game entirely. I open my phone's camera and start recording. My name is Adelaide, and this is the truth about Michael Chen. No more metaphors, no more songs, just the raw, unvarnished truth, and let the echoes fall where they may. The charity gala sparkles with false promises and designer smiles. From backstage, I watch my father work the crowd, his charm a weapon as deadly as any blade. The Singapore documents burn in my phone, waiting to be released during our performance. 5 minutes, Ethan whispers, adjusting his keyboard. His hands shake slightly. Security's everywhere. Your father's people. Ryan tunes his guitar, eyes darting between exits. Last chance to back out. No. I grip the microphone stand. We finish this. A commotion near the entrance draws my attention. Brooke wheels through the crowd in her hospital chair, mother hovering nearby. They weren't supposed to be here. Father intercepts them, his public smile cracking slightly. Samantha slips backstage, breathless. Adelaide, stop. They've got everyone. What? Your grandmother's being held for questioning about tax fraud. Ryan's sister just lost her scholarship. Ethan's family's assets are frozen. She grabs my arm. Your father's gone nuclear. He's destroying everyone connected to you. The floor seems to tilt beneath my feet, but the Singapore files are useless. Father's voice cuts through the air like a blade. He steps from the shadows, flanked by security. Did you really think I wouldn't have contingencies? Every document, every recording, I've already spun the narrative. You're just a troubled teenager, lashing out with false accusations. The Thompson Tech evidence, a tragic misunderstanding during a standard business acquisition. He checks his watch. Right now, Jamie Thompson is signing a very generous settlement agreement, including a full retraction of his claims. My hands curl into fists. You can't buy everyone's silence. I already have. He moves closer, voice dropping. Your little revolution ends tonight. Either you go on stage and perform the approved corporate songs, or I finish what I started, beginning with Brooke's future. You wouldn't... Stanford's board of trustees includes 3 of my closest friends. One phone call, and her acceptance becomes a rejection. Then Mother's Charity Foundation loses its funding. Then your grandmother's retirement savings vanish. Shall I continue? From the stage, I can see Brooke in her wheelchair, looking small and vulnerable. Mother's sunglasses hide fresh bruises. All my fault, all my choices leading to this moment. 2 minutes, calls the stage manager. Father straightens his tie. Time to choose, Adelaide. Are your principles worth destroying everyone you love? Ethan and Ryan watch me, waiting. Samantha's phone keeps buzzing with news of fresh casualties in this war I started. The approved set list, Father says, holding out a paper. Corporate-friendly songs only. And afterward, you'll publicly apologize for your emotional outbursts and misunderstandings about my business practices. My throat closes up. Everything we fought for, everyone who trusted me, all of it crumbling under the weight of his power. 1 minute. I take the set list with numb fingers. Father smiles, victorious. Wise choice. Oh, and Adelaide. He leans close, whispering. After tonight, you're still going to Switzerland, but now everyone you tried to protect gets to keep their lives. A fair trade, wouldn't you say? He walks away, leaving me hollow. Ethan touches my shoulder. Addie, play the corporate songs, I whisper. Just play them. We take the stage to polite applause. Spotlights blind me to everything except the front row, where Brooke sits with tears streaming down her face. Mother stands behind her, one hand covering her bruised mouth. The music starts, safe, sanitized corporate rock. My voice comes out mechanical, each note a surrender. Father watches from the wings, conducting my defeat like a symphony. In the crowd, I spot Jamie Thompson, his expression blank as he stands with his father. Both of them broken, just like everyone else who dared to fight back. The second song begins, and something inside me dies. This is how it ends, not with a bang of revolution, but with the whimper of submission. Every note another nail in the coffin of justice. Father was right. Money talks, and silence screams. I keep singing, each word tasting like ash. The revolution dies quietly under crystal chandeliers, drowned in champagne and compromise. This is what winning looks like for Michael Chen. This is what total defeat feels like for his daughter. The music plays on, and somewhere in the dark, the truth suffocates beneath the weight of power and privilege. Just another corporate success story. Just another broken dream. Just another echo fading into silence. The boardroom erupts into chaos when the Singapore files hit every major news outlet simultaneously. I watch from the doorway as my father's empire crumbles in real time, his face ashen as he stares at the projector screen displaying headline after headline. "Impossible," he whispers. "I controlled every copy, except the ones Brooke found," I say, stepping inside. "The ones you never knew existed because you were too busy watching me." The board members murmur, smartphones buzzing with notifications. Father's hand trembles as he reaches for his water glass. "This meeting is adjourned." "No." Jamie Thompson stands, his father beside him. "We're not leaving, not this time." Security moves toward them, but Mother appears in the doorway. "Michael, stop. It's over." Her sunglasses are gone, bruises visible to everyone. "I've already spoken to the SEC. Father's mask cracks. "Linda, what have you done? What you taught us to do." I pull out my phone, playing the recording from last night's gala. His threats, his admissions, his pride in destroying lives, all of it captured in crystal clear audio. "I learned from the best, Dad, about leverage, about power, about making people hurt." The boardroom doors burst open. Federal agents pour in, badges gleaming. "Michael Chen," one announces, "you're under investigation for securities fraud, corporate espionage, and witness intimidation." Father lunges for his laptop, but Ryan steps out from behind a potted plant, holding up a hard drive. "Looking for your backup files. Should have checked your IT department more carefully. Turns out not everyone can be bought." "You ungrateful." Father starts toward me but freezes as Brooke wheels herself into the room. "Tell them about Singapore, Dad," she says quietly. "Tell them what really happened to those families. Or I will." His face contorts. "Everything I did was for this family. No." Mother's voice cuts like steel. "Everything you did was for your ego. And now our daughters are paying the price." The agents move in with handcuffs. Father's empire collapses around him in waves. Resignations, accusations, revelations. Each betrayal another brick falling from his carefully constructed walls. "Adelaide." He says my name like a curse. "You think this makes you strong? You've destroyed everything I built. You destroyed it yourself." I step closer, close enough to see the fear finally breaking through his armor. "I just made sure everyone heard the echo. Your trust fund, your future, are less important than the truth." I turn to the board members, the investigators, the witnesses. "Everything's been sent to your emails. 20 years of evidence. No more hiding. No more threats." Father struggles as they lead him away, his perfect suit wrinkled, his power evaporating. "You'll regret this. All of you will." "The only regret," Brooke interrupts, "is that it took us so long to stop you." Mother moves to stand between us, one hand on Brooke's shoulder, the other finding mine. For the first time in years, she stands straight, unafraid. The boardroom empties slowly. Jamie Thompson nods as he leaves, his father finally walking tall again. Ryan and Ethan slip away to handle the press already gathering outside. The agents take statements, collect evidence, dismantle the kingdom piece by piece. In the aftermath, I stand at the window of my father's office, my father's former office, watching his carefully orchestrated world unravel. Below, reporters swarm the building entrance. Phones ring unanswered. Years of secrets spill into the light. "Was it worth it?" Brooke asks softly, wheeling up beside me. I think of the Thompson families, of Samantha's restaurant, of every life he crushed beneath his ambition, of Mother's bruises and Brooke's hospital stay, of my own dreams he tried to silence. "Ask me in a year," I say, watching police cars pull away with our father inside. When everyone he hurt has a chance to rebuild. Mother joins us, her reflection in the glass showing something new. Hope. "What happens now?" she asks. I take their hands, feeling the weight of victory and loss, of endings and beginnings, of echoes finally fading into silence. "Now," I say, "we learn how to live without his shadow." Outside, The sun breaks through clouds, illuminating a world forever changed by truth, by courage, and by the unstoppable power of voices finally set free. The prison visiting room smells like industrial cleaner and regret. Father sits across from me in his orange jumpsuit, somehow smaller without his expensive suits and power ties. His eyes still hold that calculating gleam, even after 6 weeks of incarceration. "You look tired," he says. "Rebuilding a company takes work. Something about cleaning up decades of corruption." He flinches slightly. Outside, rain taps against barred windows. "Your mother filed for divorce." "I know." I rest my hands on the metal table. "Brooke's walking again. Physical therapy's working. Not that you've asked." His jaw tightens. "I received your song. The new one." Of course he has. The whole world has. Corporate Redemption hit #1 yesterday, its lyrics telling the story of fallen empires and broken families, of truth and consequences, of daughters finding their voices. "It's different from what I expected," he says carefully. "Less vengeful. Revenge wasn't the point, not anymore." He leans forward, chains clinking. "Then what was?" "Understanding." I meet his gaze. "I needed to know why. Why you chose power over family. Why breaking people became so easy for you. Everything I did was for control, not for us, never for us." I stand, my chair scraping concrete. "The Thompson families are rebuilding. Mother's foundation is helping them, along with everyone else you hurt. Even Jamie's father is healing. And you?" Something flickers in his eyes. Concern, manipulation. Even now, I can't tell. "Are you healing, Adelaide?" The question hangs between us like smoke. Through the window, I watch rain trace patterns on glass, each drop an echo of choices made and prices paid. "I'm performing tonight," I say instead of answering. "The company's benefit concert for the Victims Fund. Brooke's introducing me. You always were stronger together." He looks down at his hands. "I should have seen that sooner." "Yes, you should have." I turn to leave, but his voice stops me. "The Singapore deal. How did you know where to look?" "I didn't." The truth feels like release. Brooke did. She spent years watching, learning, gathering evidence while playing the perfect daughter. Your greatest weakness was thinking she was just like you. Understanding dawns on his face, the final piece clicking into place. All this time, he'd thought I was the architect of his downfall, never suspecting that his favored daughter had been the one slowly dismantling his empire from within. "Give her my..." He stops, perhaps finally realizing how hollow words have become. Outside the prison, Ethan and Ryan wait in the band van. Samantha's there too, her family's restaurant thriving now that the truth is known. They don't ask about the visit. They don't need to. My phone buzzes. "Brooke." "Ready when you are." The benefit concert venue looms ahead, its marquee announcing "Truth Echoes, a Night of Healing." Hundreds of people wait outside, former employees, affected families, supporters, all here to witness something broken being rebuilt into something better. "You okay?" Ryan asks as we unload equipment. I think of father in his prison cell, of mother finding her strength, of Brooke's quiet revolution that made everything possible, of revenge transformed into restoration. "Play the new arrangement tonight," I tell them, the one with the hope at the end. Inside, Brooke stands at the microphone, her cane barely visible in the stage lights. The audience falls silent as she speaks about truth, about family, about the courage to change broken systems. I step up beside her, our shadows merging on the wall. In the front row, mother watches without sunglasses, her face healing inside and out. Jamie Thompson sits with his father, both nodding in quiet solidarity. The music starts, not a weapon anymore, but a bridge. Each note carries echoes of what was lost and what was found, of battles fought and prices paid, of revenge transformed into something deeper, something that might actually heal. Brooke squeezes my hand as I begin to sing. The truth echoes through the hall, through our lives, through the spaces between broken and whole. Some notes linger, some wounds heal, some echoes transform into new songs entirely. And in the end, that's enough.
I'm Emma. I landed my first real job as an accountant at D&M Construction right out of college. My desk was buried in the back corner of the office, a tiny space crammed with piles of invoices and contract agreements. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. It was during one of those late evenings when I first met Michael. I was wrestling with an especially stubborn printer that decided to jam when he walked by. He was the new head of the project department, and he had that sort of aura that turned heads, a confident stride and a sharp suit. "Need a hand?" he asked, noticing my battle with the paper tray. I looked up, slightly embarrassed. "Yeah, this thing hates me." Michael chuckled and stepped closer, his hands skillfully navigating the guts of the printer. "These machines have a mind of their own." "Thanks," I sighed as he pulled out a crumpled sheet of paper. "I'm Emma, by the way." "Michael, I've seen you around. You're the one making all the numbers work, right?" He flashed a grin that made me forget about the printer for a moment. We continued to see more of each other, and our casual meetings started to feel like the best parts of my day. Michael was easy to be around, charming, yes, but also genuinely interested in what I had to say. One Friday, as we were leaving the office together, Michael stopped me by the elevator. "Emma, would you like to go out tomorrow? Maybe see a movie or grab some dinner?" A few months into our dating, Michael decided it was time I met his parents. He still lived with them in a small, cozy apartment cluttered with family photos and keepsakes. The anticipation of meeting them was nerve-wracking, not just because they were his parents, but also because I knew they held traditional views about success and roles within a family. As we stepped into the apartment, the smell of homemade food welcomed us. Michael introduced me with a proud smile. "Mom, Dad, this is Emma, the woman I told you about." His mother, Linda, scrutinized me from head to toe, then offered a stiff smile as she shook my hand. "So, Emma, where do you work?" she asked, her voice laced with curiosity, but somehow sharp. "I'm an accountant at D&M Construction," I replied, trying to sound confident. "An accountant, huh?" his father, George, chimed in, leaning back in his chair. "Well, our Michael is the head of new projects." "Quite a significant role, right, Michael?" Michael nodded. "Yeah, Dad, but Emma's job is crucial too. She handles a lot of the company's finances." Linda and George exchanged looks, their expressions unreadable. "Yes, but you're the one with the career that's going places," Linda said, turning her gaze back to me. "An accountant is nice, dear, but Michael is making real strides in the company." The air thickened with that statement, and I forced a smile, feeling my stomach twist. It was clear they saw a hierarchy where their son stood on top, and I was just there. The dinner progressed with small talk and an undercurrent of judgment. I could tell they were assessing my every word, my every move, to see if I measured up to their expectations for their son. Not long after that uncomfortable dinner, Michael popped the question in our favorite park. It was surreal. There he was, down on one knee, with the most earnest look in his eyes. My joy was palpable. "Yes, Michael, yes." As we started planning our life together, the bubble of our engagement was pricked by the reality of his parents' influence. One evening, while Michael was helping his mom with dishes after another dinner at their place, Linda pulled me aside. "Emma, dear," she began, her voice low and serious, "Michael has a promising future. And with such a future, we just think it's wise to organize things properly." "What do you mean, organize?" "A prenuptial agreement, dear. It's just practical," she explained, her tone implying that it was a foregone conclusion. The word hit me like a ton of bricks. "Prenup? Are you suggesting I might go after Michael's money?" "It's not personal, dear. It's precautionary," she answered, her voice soft but firm. When Michael and I were finally alone in the car, I couldn't keep it in anymore. "Michael, your mom wants us to sign a prenup." He didn't seem surprised. Yeah, she mentioned it to me too. It's just a safety net. He tried to reassure me, reaching out for my hand. I pulled away, feeling betrayed. Feels more like a trap, Michael. He looked hurt. It's not a trap. It's just how my family handles things. They want to protect what we're building. The rest of the ride was silent, each of us lost in our thoughts. At home, Michael brought out the prenup papers. They lay on our kitchen table, like an uninvited guest. Look, Emma, it's straightforward. We'll both be protected, he said, attempting to bridge the gap between us. I leafed through the document, each clause tightening the knot in my stomach. This doesn't protect us, Michael. It protects you from me. We can change anything you're not comfortable with, he offered, but his voice lacked conviction. We spent the next few hours going over every line, negotiating terms that felt less like a betrayal. It was tough, arguing over hypotheticals that felt like they could tear us apart. But by the end of the night, we forged something that looked less like his parents' will and more like a mutual agreement. Adjusting to married life in our little rented apartment came with its own set of joys and challenges. At first, everything felt new and exciting, even the mundane tasks of setting up home and figuring out who does what. Michael and I fell into a comfortable routine, filled with small celebrations of our new life together. At work, I kept on with my accounting duties, just another face among many in a large company. But things started to shift when, a year into our marriage, my boss, Mr. Thompson, called me into his office. He was a man of few words, and even fewer smiles. Emma, you've been pulling some impressive numbers. I see potential in you, he said, his voice gruff, but not unkind. I was taken aback, unsure of what this meant. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I appreciate your confidence in me. It's not just confidence, he continued, shuffling papers on his desk as if looking for evidence of my hard work. It's fact. I'm promoting you to chief accountant. The promotion came as a shock, but it was a welcome one. I couldn't wait to share the news with Michael, thinking he'd be thrilled. When I told him over dinner, his reaction was mixed, a smile, yes, but there was a hesitation in his eyes. That's great, babe. Really? Chief accountant, huh? He said, trying to keep his voice upbeat. Yeah, can you believe it? I replied, excitement bubbling in my chest. Sure. It's just, you'll be making more now, right? A lot more than me, he added, his tone shifting slightly. I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. Hey, this is good for us, for our future. It's our success, not just mine. Michael nodded, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Yeah, of course. Just don't go bragging to my folks, okay? They still think I'm the high flyer in the family. I agreed, not wanting to cause any family tensions. Your secret's safe with me, I assured him with a light laugh, trying to keep the atmosphere easy. But as the months rolled by and my responsibilities increased, so did the gap between Michael's perception of our careers and the reality. Another year passed, and another promotion landed on my lap, this time to financial director. The gap in our incomes widened, and Michael's jokes about my rich wife became more frequent, each one stinging a bit more than the last. One evening, I overheard Michael on the phone with his mother. No, Emma's just the same, still crunching numbers. Yeah, she likes it well enough. I stood frozen outside the room, the words hitting harder than expected. He hadn't told them about either of my promotions. I confronted him about it later that night. Why haven't you told your parents about my job? About how well I'm doing? I asked, feeling both hurt and angry. Michael sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, Emma, it's complicated. Dad, he's got these old-fashioned ideas about success and who provides in the family. I knew he was right about his parents, but it didn't make the deception easier to swallow. We're supposed to be a team, Michael. It feels like you're ashamed of what I've achieved. The conversation lingered in the air, unresolved. We were a team, but at that moment, it felt like we were playing on different fields. I knew I had to be understanding, but part of me also needed Michael to step up and own our reality, not just the one his parents wanted to see. Living with Michael had its ups and downs, but what really started to wear on me was the financial strain caused by his parents' constant demands for money. Before we got married, Michael lived with them and took care of all their expenses. Now that we were on our own, I had hoped that would change, but old habits die hard. One evening, as I was sorting through our monthly bills, I noticed that the numbers just weren't adding up. We seemed to be bleeding money faster than I could account for. "Michael, we need to talk about our finances," I said as he walked in from work, looking tired. "What's up?" he asked, dropping his bag by the door and sinking into the couch with a sigh. "It's about the money going out every month. I'm paying all the bills and the rent, and it's starting to add up. Aren't you contributing to any of these?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even but feeling my frustration bubble. Michael rubbed his temples and sighed. "Look, I've been helping my folks out a lot lately. They've had some extra expenses, and, well, I can't just leave them hanging." "But that's all your money going to them. What about us? Our future?" I pressed, needing him to see the full picture. I know. It's just temporary. Things will stabilize," he reassured me, but his voice lacked conviction. "This temporary seems to be stretching indefinitely, Michael. Your mom even tells people that you're the one supporting me, and that's far from the truth," I countered, feeling the sting of each word. Michael looked away, the weight of the situation sinking in. "I'm sorry, Emma. I owe them a lot. They raised me, and it feels wrong to turn them away when they need help." "But at what cost? We can't even plan for anything because we don't know how much of your paycheck will go to your parents each month," I argued, my worry growing as I thought about our future. He didn't have an answer, just sat there looking as lost as I felt. The conversation was going nowhere, and it left a sour taste in my mouth. The next time we visited his parents, the tension was palpable. His mother, Linda, made a point of mentioning how Michael had been their rock, hinting at how much he'd been helping them out. "We don't know what we'd do without Michael. He's been such a support, not just emotionally but financially too," she said, glancing my way with a sharp smile. As days turned into weeks with no change, I began to wonder if we'd ever find our way out of this mess, or if the weight of his obligations to his parents would always overshadow our plans and dreams. As time marched on, the idea of buying our own place started to seem more like a necessity than a luxury. I broached the subject with Michael one night while we were cleaning up after dinner. "Michael, I've been thinking," I started, wiping down the counter. "Maybe it's time we looked into buying a house. Renting is just throwing money away every month." Michael paused, drying a plate slowly. "A house, huh? Yeah, that sounds great, but do we have enough for a down payment?" "I've been saving up on the side. I think we might just have enough to get us through the door, if we tighten our belts a bit more," I replied, hopeful. He put the plate down and leaned against the counter. "That's incredible, Em. I didn't know you had that much set aside." "Well, I wanted it to be a surprise. But here's the thing," I continued, bracing myself for his reaction. "The down payment will mostly be from my savings. I mean, I want this to be our home, equally ours, but on paper, it'll look a bit lopsided." Michael's face fell slightly, and he nodded. "I get it. Your money, your rules. I just wish I could chip in more." "It's not about rules, Michael. It's our home. But legally, I think it would make sense to have the house under my name, just for now," I explained, trying to keep the conversation light but firm. Michael sighed, scratching his head. "Yeah, I guess that makes sense. As long as we're together in this, that's what counts, right?" "Exactly, we're in this together," I reassured him, reaching out to squeeze his hand. We started house hunting that weekend, and it didn't take long before we found a small, charming place that felt just right. Once the house was officially ours, I took on the mortgage payments, and we moved in. It felt like a fresh start, a real part of our future taking shape. But old habits and secrets don't just stay behind, especially not Michael's tendency to shield his parents from our reality. One evening, I overheard Michael on the phone in our new study. No, Mom, the house is great. Yeah, Emma's really done well for herself. I'm keeping up, don't worry, he said, his voice low. When he came out, I confronted him. Why do you keep doing that? Making it sound like I'm the one pulling all the weight. Michael flinched, then exhaled deeply. I didn't mean anything by it, Emma. It's just easier this way. They think I'm doing well, too. Let's just enjoy our new home, okay? We'll deal with my parents later. I nodded, reluctantly letting the issue go, but it gnawed at me. Our home was supposed to be our sanctuary, not another stage for half-truths and tiptoeing around delicate egos. Life at home was tense after Michael's latest career hiccup. He was always on edge, trying to secure a promotion by hustling harder at work, making deals left and right. He seemed more desperate to prove himself, especially to his parents. One evening, while Michael was late again, caught up in meetings, I stumbled upon some documents sprawled across our home office desk. The top sheet caught my eye, a contract proposal with a company I recognized as recently declared bankrupt. Alarm bells rang in my head. Signing with a bankrupt company could jeopardize not only Michael's position but could also drag our company through the mud. When Michael finally came home, I confronted him. Michael, what's this about signing with a company that's bankrupt? Do you realize the risks involved? He brushed me off with a wave of his hand, his eyes glued to his phone. I know what I'm doing, Emma. This deal could be a big break for me. But it's a reckless move. It could backfire on you, and on both of us. Please, think this through. I pleaded, hoping to get through to him. Michael scoffed. Look, Emma, I get that you're trying to help, but I know how to handle my job. These are the risks we have to take in the business world. A few weeks later, my worst fears came true. Michael came home, paler than usual, slumping into a chair across from me in the kitchen. I was fired today, he muttered, avoiding my gaze. I was furious and scared but managed to keep my voice steady. What are we going to do now? You know we have the mortgage and all our other bills. Michael was quiet, then he looked up with a desperate sort of determination. Just, don't tell my parents, okay? They can't know about this. It would crush them. So I agreed, more out of shock than anything else, and we pretended nothing had changed when his parents called or visited. But now, with only my income, the financial strain was immense. I handled our expenses alone, feeling the burden of each bill. One day, Michael came to me, hesitant. Emma, I need to ask you for something. It's about my parents, they need some financial help again. Could we? I cut him off, unable to hide my frustration. You want me to give more money to your parents now? When we're barely scraping by with your job gone and me covering everything? Michael flinched. It's just that they're really strapped this month, and I promised. No, Michael. Just no. I'm stretched thin as it is. You need to sort this out. Find a job, any job. I snapped, the stress boiling over. He didn't say anything, just walked away, and we didn't speak for the rest of the week. Losing my mother was one of the hardest things I've ever had to endure. The only silver lining was the small house she left me, a quaint place where I had so many childhood memories. Not long after the funeral, my mother-in-law, Linda, brought up the house. You know, dear, it might be best if you sold that little house. You could use the money to help us, she suggested during one of their visits. I was stunned by her audacity. It's my house, Linda, and I'm going to keep it. I've decided to rent it out to help pay off our mortgage, I responded, trying to keep my cool. Linda frowned, clearly not happy with my decision, but she didn't push further at the time. I was too overwhelmed with work and managing our finances to handle the rentals myself, so I asked Michael to find us tenants. A few weeks later, he told me he'd found the perfect tenants, an elderly couple looking for a place just like my mom's house. Trusting him, I thought nothing more of it until a few months later when I realized that no rent had been deposited into my account. Concerned, I decided to visit the house and speak with the tenants directly. When I arrived, the sight before me was like a slap in the face. Michael's parents were lounging in the living room, completely at home. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. Linda looked up, not the least bit ashamed. "Oh, hello, dear. Michael said we could stay here. Isn't it lovely?" I was expecting tenants who would pay rent, Linda. "Not you living here rent-free." I shot back, feeling betrayed. "We're family, dear. We thought you wouldn't mind," she replied, her tone dismissive. I stormed out and called Michael right then and there. "Why are your parents in my mother's house? You told me you rented it out to an elderly couple." "They are an elderly couple, Emma. And they needed a place. You can afford to help out," Michael tried to justify over the phone. "This is not helping, Michael. This is taking advantage. I'm paying our mortgage alone, and now this? Your parents need to leave. Now," I said firmly, my decision absolute. Michael was silent for a moment. "Emma, they have nowhere else to go. They sold their apartment. They thought." "I don't care what they thought. They have until the end of the week to move out." I cut him off, too angry to care about anything else. The conversation ended badly, with Michael pleading and me standing my ground. When I confronted his parents again, telling them they needed to leave, Linda lashed out. "You can't do this to us, Emma. We're family. Where's your heart?" she cried out, her words bitter and cold. "My heart is trying to keep my head above water, Linda. You need to leave," I replied, my voice firm despite the tremor I felt inside. They didn't move willingly. I had to call the police to escort them out after they refused to leave by the deadline. Linda's parting words were venomous, cursing me and calling me heartless. Walking back into my own home after the mess with the police, I was hoping for some peace, maybe a moment to gather my thoughts. But the universe had other plans. As soon as I opened the door, the first thing I heard was the murmurs from the living room, my mother-in-law's voice unmistakably sharp. I dropped my keys on the hall table and walked in to find Linda and George sitting there, coffee in hand, chatting with Michael. Their expressions turned, fixing me with looks that ranged from accusatory to outright hostile. Michael stood up abruptly, his face red with anger. "How could you do that to my parents, Emma? Apologize, now." Linda chimed in, her tone dripping with disdain. "You've shown your true colors today, Emma. You're unworthy of our family. I think you should leave this house, it belongs to our son." And as if to twist the knife a bit deeper, she added, "Remember the prenup. You won't get a thing from us, and Michael will have the house." I stared at them, the absurdity of the situation almost laughable. Michael nodded along with his mother's words, a smug look on his face. "That's right, Emma. You're my wife, you should listen to me, obey me. If you don't, I'll leave you. And good luck without the alimony." I laughed. "You think I want anything from you, Michael? I agree to the divorce. In fact, I welcome it." Michael's face went pale, his confident stance faltering. "I was just, that was just a joke. Come on, Emma." But I was done. Turning to his parents, I laid it all out. Michael has been unemployed for over a year now. He lives off my earnings, in my house. I made the down payment, I pay the mortgage. Legally and otherwise, this house is mine. The color drained from Linda's face as she turned to Michael, who could only lower his head in shame, muttering, "It's true. I want all of you out of my house. Now. And don't come back," I said, my voice steady but my whole body shaking with the intensity of the moment. They were indignant, of course. Linda started to argue, but I was firm. "Leave now, or I call the police again." I heard Linda demanding Michael pay for a hotel, his quiet, defeated voice responding, "I don't have any money, Mom." Once they were gone, the weight of the confrontation hit me. I turned to Michael, who still seemed stunned by how things had turned out. "You should leave too, Michael. I'll send your things." That night, he left, and the silence of the house was both eerie and soothing. The divorce proceedings were straightforward. Michael didn't contest anything, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of resignation, perhaps out of the lack of money for a good lawyer. Now, living alone, I've regained a sense of peace and control. I rent out my mother's house, which helps cover the mortgage, and every decision, from the groceries I buy to the color I paint the walls, is mine alone. At night, I sit in the living room, the same room that once hosted so many painful confrontations, and I feel a deep sense of relief. I'm free. Free from the deceit, free from the control, and most importantly, free to build my life the way I see fit. Growing up in our house, it was clear who held the spotlight: Nathan, my older brother by 5 years. He was the golden boy, literally and figuratively. He had the best of everything, the latest clothes, the newest gadgets, while I made do with hand-me-downs and second-hand toys. Nathan was undeniably handsome, a trait that had our parents, especially Mom, beaming with pride. I swear, Nathan could be a model if he didn't have his heart set on business. Mom would gush to her friends over coffee, while I sat in the corner, a book my only company. It wasn't just his looks. Nathan was charming, a social butterfly who could light up any room he walked into. I, on the other hand, was plain, average features, too shy, too awkward. It was like living in the shadow of a celebrity while being invisible at the same time. Even at family gatherings, it was Nathan this, Nathan that. Did you hear about Nathan's latest school project? It's just remarkable. Dad would announce proudly, while I'd quietly help set up the food or clean up the dishes, rarely a part of the conversation unless prompted, and even then, only briefly. The disparity in attention only grew as we got older. When Nathan was accepted into one of the most prestigious colleges in the country, it was as if he had single-handedly secured our family's legacy. The celebration lasted for days. It wasn't until the local news flashed Nathan's face across the screen that things took a turn. Local student accused of multiple frauds, the headline screamed. He had been charming his way into wealthy women's lives, only to scam them out of their savings. The room was silent as the news anchor detailed Nathan's exploits. Dad turned off the TV, his hands shaking. Mom sat down, her face pale. How could this happen, she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. I don't understand, Dad muttered. We gave him everything. I stood in the corner, watching the unraveling. It was the first time I'd seen them doubt their golden boy. The next day, we gathered in the living room, a family meeting that felt more like a crisis summit. Nathan, of course, wasn't there, he was in custody. Claire, Dad started, his voice heavy. Your mother and I, we've been thinking. Mom nodded, taking over with a tremble in her voice. We were so focused on your brother, we didn't see. We're so sorry. Their apologies hung in the air, thick and unexpected. I sat, unsure of how to respond. I'd spent years in Nathan's shadow, never quite resenting him, but never feeling enough either. We want to make it right, Dad said. We've decided to use some of our savings for your college, Claire. It's your turn now. I was taken aback. College? I'd given up on that dream, figuring I'd find a job and move out as soon as I could. Really? Are you sure? Yes, Mom said firmly. It's your time to shine. The weeks that followed were a blur. I enrolled in college to study accounting, something solid and reliable, opposite of Nathan's erratic charm. My parents attended my orientation, something they'd never done with Nathan, too confident in his ability to navigate anything. At the orientation, Mom squeezed my hand. You're going to do great, she said, a little too enthusiastically. I smiled, squeezing back. Thanks, Mom. I'll try my best. College life was a balancing act. I juggled classes with a part-time job at the campus library, where I shelved books and helped students find resources. One of my coworkers, Jenna, a chatty history major, quickly noticed my reserved nature. Hey, Claire, you always bolt out of here as soon as your shift ends. Wanna grab coffee sometime? Jenna asked one evening as we were closing up. I'd like that, I said, surprised by my own willingness to connect. Maybe it was the normalcy of her invitation, or maybe I was just tired of being alone all the time. During coffee, Jenna talked about her thesis and I shared a bit about my family, careful to leave Nathan out of it. It was nice, talking to someone who saw me just as me. "You're pretty cool, Claire. Don't let the quiet thing fool anyone," Jenna said with a grin as we left the cafe. Balancing school and work was tough, but fulfilling. I'd study late into the night, sometimes struggling to keep up, especially when group projects came up. I found that I could lead a team well, something I'd never have discovered if not for my new environment. "Alright, team, let's divide up the work based on what parts of the project we're strongest at," I suggested during one group meeting, feeling a bit like a conductor trying to lead an orchestra. "You seem to know what you're doing, Claire. I'm glad you're our group leader," one of my classmates, Mark, commented. His words boosted my confidence more than he could know. Each day was a learning curve, filled with small victories and setbacks. I learned not just about accounting, but about who I was beyond my family's expectations, or lack thereof. I learned that I was competent, that I could make friends and influence people, and that I was more than just the quiet girl from a troubled family. As the semesters passed, I continued to excel academically and eventually, graduation day arrived. Walking across that stage to receive my diploma, I felt a surge of pride. I had done it, on my own terms, without the overshadowing success of my brother. After graduation, I landed a job at a private accounting firm. It was everything I had hoped for, challenging, engaging, and it offered me a sense of independence I had craved for so long. I moved into a small rented apartment, not far from work, and began the adult part of my life with enthusiasm. Every paycheck was a step toward my goal, saving enough for a down payment on my own place. The evening had settled into a quiet routine when my phone rang, slicing through the silence of my small apartment. I glanced at the screen, Mom's name lit up. My heart sank a little, calls this late were unusual. "Mom? What's up?" "It's late," I said, trying to keep my voice light, but the tremor in hers cut straight through me. "Claire, it's your dad, he had a heart attack. He's gone, Claire. He's gone," she stuttered out between sobs, each word heavy and suffocating. I felt the phone slip slightly as my grip loosened in shock. "What? How, Mom, are you okay? Where are you?" My questions tumbled out, frantic and overlapping. "I'm at home. The paramedics, they just left. They couldn't do anything," she cried. I could hear the shattering pain in her voice, the kind that echoes and reverberates through your own soul. When I arrived, the house was eerily silent, the kind of silence that screams in your ears. Mom was sitting in the living room, a crumpled tissue in hand, her eyes lost and red. I rushed to her, kneeling in front of her, taking her hands in mine. "Mom, I'm so sorry," I whispered, my own voice breaking as the reality set in. She just nodded, pulling me into a tight hug. "He was fine this morning, Claire. We were planning to visit the market this weekend," she murmured into my shoulder, her voice muffled by grief. The days that followed were a whirlwind of funeral arrangements and relatives pouring in to offer their condolences. "Did you get a hold of Nathan?" I asked one afternoon as we sifted through old photographs of Dad to display at the service. "Yes, I did," Mom replied, her voice flat, her hands pausing over a picture of Dad holding a much younger Nathan on his shoulders. "He said he was too busy to deal with nonsense. He asked about the inheritance first thing. When I told him everything was in my name, he just hung up." The funeral was a quiet affair. Dad's old friends, our extended family, and neighbors came to pay their respects. The absence of my brother was noted, his empty chair a stark reminder of his chosen detachment. After everyone had left and we were alone again, Mom took to sitting by the window, staring out with a vacant gaze. I tried to engage her, to bring her back from the edge of her grief, but the light in her had dimmed. "Mom, you're not alone. I'm here," I reassured her one evening, my hand squeezing hers. She turned to me, her eyes wet with unshed tears. "I know, honey. And I'm so grateful for you. I wish things were different." After the funeral, life settled into a new kind of normal. Mom was quieter these days, her smiles fewer and more strained. I tried to fill our home with light, cooking her favorite meals, talking about my day at work, anything to lift her spirits. But often, I caught her staring out the window, lost in her thoughts, the joy that once lit up her eyes, dimmed by sorrow. One evening, as I was clearing up after dinner, I noticed Mom was on the phone in the other room, her voice barely above a whisper. Curiosity piqued, I paused, the clatter of dishes ceasing. "No, Nathan, I can't keep doing this." "Yes, I know, but..." Her voice trailed off into the quiet hum of the living room. She never mentioned she was in touch with Nathan, and alarm bells rang in my head. When she came back into the kitchen, her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly as she sat down at the table. "Mom, what's going on? Who was that on the phone?" I asked, sitting across from her, my tone more stern than I intended. She sighed, a deep, weary sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "It was Nathan," she admitted, avoiding my gaze. "He's been calling more often, asking for money." "Money?" I repeated, anger starting to bubble inside me. "Why are you giving him money? Especially after he didn't even bother to come to Dad's funeral." Mom wrung her hands, her eyes moist as she looked up at me. I know it's wrong, but he's still my son, Claire. He says he's in trouble, that he needs it to get back on his feet." I stood up, pacing back and forth as I tried to process her words. "Mom, he's using you. You can't let him do this, especially not now. He didn't even care enough to show up when Dad died." She nodded, tears spilling over her cheeks. "I just thought, maybe if I helped him, he'd come around. See what he's missing, see that we still love him." I stopped pacing, kneeling beside her chair, taking her hands in mine. "Mom, I love you, and I know you love Nathan. But you can't set yourself on fire to keep him warm. He's an adult. He made his choices. You need to think about your future now, about what's left for you." The next day, when Nathan called again, I was with Mom, standing by her side for moral support. She put him on speaker, and her voice was firmer this time, more resolute. "Nathan, I can't send you money anymore. You need to find another way to sort out whatever mess you're in," she declared, a slight tremor in her voice but her resolve clear. There was a pause, and he scoffed, and I could almost see his sneer, through the phone. "Fine. Don't come crawling back to me when you need something." The line went dead, and the silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of severed ties. Mom sighed, a mix of relief and sorrow in her exhale. "Did I do the right thing, Claire?" I squeezed her hand, reassuring her with a nod. "You did, Mom. It's time we both started healing." From that day on, Mom stopped sending money. It was a tough decision, one that left its own scars, but it was necessary. Nathan had made his choice, and we had made ours, to move forward, no longer at the mercy of his demands. It was early morning when I got the call that changed everything again. The sharp ringtone pierced through the silence of my apartment, a harsh reminder that life was still full of unexpected turns. "Claire," Aunt Linda's voice came through the phone, sounding strained and urgent. "You need to come to the hospital right away. It's your mom." Dropping everything, I rushed to the hospital, my heart pounding with fear and my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The corridors seemed longer than usual, echoing with the sounds of my hurried steps. When I finally reached her room, Aunt Linda was waiting outside, her eyes red-rimmed. "What happened? Is she okay?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. Aunt Linda shook her head, her voice breaking as she spoke. "It was a heart attack, Claire. She didn't make it." The words hit me like a physical blow, and I leaned against the wall for support. My mom, the constant in my life despite everything, was gone. Tears welled up in my eyes, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. "I'm so sorry, Claire." She went peacefully in her sleep, Aunt Linda said, pulling me into a hug. We stood there, holding each other, sharing our grief. After a few moments, we stepped into the room to see her. Mom looked peaceful, as if she were just sleeping. I approached the bedside, taking her cool hand in mine. "Mom, I hope you're at peace now," I whispered, my tears dropping onto the white hospital sheets. "I'm going to miss you so much." Aunt Linda placed a hand on my shoulder, squeezing gently. "She loved you, Claire. She was so proud of the woman you'd become." Leaving the hospital, the task of planning another funeral loomed over me. Mom deserved a beautiful send-off, something dignified and full of love, just like she was. I took it upon myself to organize everything, wanting to ensure it reflected the warmth she always brought into our lives. During the preparations, I called Nathan, feeling it was only right he knew, even if he hadn't been there for her at the end. "Nathan, it's Claire. Mom's passed away. We're organizing the funeral for this Friday," I said, my voice void of the anger I once felt towards him. There was a pause, and then he replied, his voice devoid of any real emotion. "I see. I won't make it. Just handle whatever needs to be done." Life after Mom's funeral felt strangely quiet. The house was filled with echoes of a past that felt both close and distant, a reminder of everything that had transpired. Just as I was beginning to find my rhythm in the silence, it was shattered by an unexpected and unwelcome return. It was a cloudy Thursday afternoon when I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Peeking through the curtains, my heart sank. There stood Nathan, stepping out of an expensive-looking car, with a woman I assumed was his wife, based on her familiar face from some of the pictures he used to share online. Her appearance was bold, almost too bold, with bright red lipstick and heavy makeup that made her look out of place against the backdrop of our modest family home. They didn't bother with the courtesy of a phone call or even a knock. Nathan marched up to the door, his face still handsome, but etched with the hard lines of a life recklessly lived. He didn't wait for an invitation, pushing the door open and striding in with an air of entitlement. "Claire, long time no see," Nathan said, his voice dripping with a familiarity that we no longer shared. He pushed past me without waiting for an invitation, his wife following closely behind. "What are you doing here, Nathan?" I managed to say, my voice firm, despite the turmoil inside. "We're here to stay, obviously." "Heard you've been living it up in Mom's house all by yourself," Nathan replied, throwing his jacket on the couch as if he owned the place. His wife smirked, scanning the room like she was appraising the property. "Nice place. We'll take good care of it, don't worry." I felt a flash of anger. "This is still Mom's house, and you can't just come back and claim it like nothing happened. You didn't even come to her funeral, Nathan. You have no right to be here." Nathan laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the empty room. "Oh, come on, Claire. We're family. And as the only son, don't you think I deserve a piece of the pie? Well, we're here now, and we're staying. Get used to it, or get out." I was shaking, my hands balled into fists at my sides. "This is not happening. You will leave. This is my home." Nathan laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "We'll be back with our things in 3 days. Make sure you're gone by then." As they turned and left, the door slamming shut behind them, the finality of the threat hung heavy in the air. I was alone, the echoes of their laughter and threats bouncing off the walls of the home I had come to cherish as my sanctuary. Furious and shaken, I dialed Aunt Linda immediately. She answered on the second ring, her voice a comfort as always. "Aunt Linda, Nathan just showed up. He's trying to kick me out of the house. He said he and his wife are moving in," I managed to say, my voice tight with emotion. "Oh, Claire, that boy has gone too far this time," Aunt Linda replied, her tone hardening with each word. "Don't you worry. I'm going to come over. We'll sort this out together. Nathan needs to be put in his place, and I'm just the one to do it." After we hung up, I paced through the house, each room filled with memories of my parents, of a happier, simpler time. I wasn't going to let Nathan destroy what little peace I had managed to find in the aftermath of our parents' deaths. With Aunt Linda on my side, I felt a flicker of hope. Together, we would face whatever came next. 3 days had never passed so slowly. As the sun rose on the third day, the tension in the air was palpable. Aunt Linda arrived early, carrying not only her purse but also an air of resolve that was both comforting and intimidating. "Morning, Claire," she greeted me as she stepped into the kitchen, where I was nervously sipping my coffee. "Ready for this?" I nodded, setting my mug down with a clatter. "As ready as I'll ever be, I guess." "Thanks for being here, Aunt Linda." "Wouldn't be anywhere else," she assured me, her voice firm. "Now, let's go over what we'll say when they get here." We didn't have long to wait. Before long, the sound of a car engine broke the quiet morning. Through the window, I saw Nathan and his wife pull into the driveway. My heart started pounding, but Aunt Linda's calm demeanor helped steady me. They didn't bother knocking. Nathan opened the door and strode in as if he owned the place, his wife trailing behind him, her smirk more pronounced than ever. "Claire, get out. We're here to take what's rightfully ours," he barked, his wife nodding in agreement behind him. Aunt Linda stepped forward from where she had been standing just out of sight. "Nathan, you should be ashamed. After all your sister and your late mother have been through, you show up now, making demands?" Nathan sneered. "Save it, Aunt Linda. We know there's no will. Claire, move out. This place is ours now." That's when Aunt Linda, with a calmness that belied the tension in the air, waved an envelope in front of Nathan. "Actually, your mother did leave a will. And I, as her appointed executor, have it right here." Nathan's eyes widened as Aunt Linda held out the envelope. In a swift move, he grabbed it, tearing it to pieces. His wife laughed, a sound that echoed off the walls mockingly. "There, no will, no proof. This house is ours now," Nathan declared triumphantly. Aunt Linda just chuckled, the sound making Nathan's smile falter. "You think that was the original?" "Oh, Nathan, that was just a copy. The real will is safe with the notary." She reached into her bag and pulled out another document, unfolding it with deliberate slowness. "Here's what your mother really wanted," Aunt Linda said, her voice steady and clear. She began to read aloud. "To my daughter, Claire, I leave the family home and a sum of $150,000, for she has shown the strength and compassion of character that represents our family's legacy. To my son, Nathan, I leave our family Bible, in the hopes that he will find guidance to overcome his vices and find a path to redemption." The words hung heavy in the air. Nathan's face went from red to pale, his earlier confidence deflating like a punctured balloon. "This isn't fair. You can't do this to me. I deserve half of that money, Claire," Nathan shouted, his voice echoing with desperation. "You deserve what Mom decided to give you," I replied, my voice firm despite the shaking of my hands. "And if you don't leave now, I will call the police." Nathan looked at his wife, then back at Aunt Linda and me. His wife pulled at his arm, muttering something under her breath. After a moment that stretched out painfully, they turned and stalked back to their car. The morning after Nathan left for good, I stood in the quiet of the house, the early light casting gentle patterns across the floor. The house felt different today, like a weight had been lifted, a place just for me now, full of potential and promise for the future. I made my way to the kitchen, where Aunt Linda was already making coffee. The aroma filled the space, comforting and familiar. "Morning, Claire. How'd you sleep?" Aunt Linda asked, handing me a mug. "Better than I have in weeks," I admitted, taking a cautious sip. "It feels like I can finally breathe again." She smiled, pulling out a chair at the table. "It's your fresh start, right here. What are you planning to do first?" I joined her at the table, my mind buzzing with ideas. "I think I'm going to start by redecorating a bit. Make this place more me. And then, I might even start looking into what it takes to start my own accounting firm. It's been a dream for a while." "That sounds wonderful, Claire," Aunt Linda said, her eyes twinkling with pride. "You've got such a good head on your shoulders. I've no doubt you'll make it happen." Later that day, I walked through each room, imagining the changes I'd make. In the midst of my planning, the doorbell rang. At the door stood my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. "Claire, dear, I heard about your mother." I'm so sorry for your loss. And I heard your brother was trying to cause some trouble, she added, a hint of concern in her tone. I nodded, not wanting to spread the family drama too far. Yes, but it's settled now. I'm just looking forward to some peace. Well, if you need help with anything, my son is always around. He's good with repairs, and he's cheap too, she offered with a chuckle. Thanks, I might take you up on that. I'm planning some changes around here, I said, grateful for her support. The next few weeks were a flurry of activity. Painting, moving furniture, and even a few repairs courtesy of Mrs. Thompson's son, who turned out to be as handy as promised. Each brushstroke and each new piece of decor transformed the house into a reflection of my personality, something I had longed for without even realizing. One evening, sitting in my newly arranged living room, the changes weren't just physical. I felt changed too, more confident, more grounded. The house no longer felt like a battleground of family conflicts, but a sanctuary of my aspirations. Let me introduce myself, I'm Amelia, living in a sprawling house just at the city's edge. I own a pet supplies company and a big retail supermarket focused on pets. Animals? They've been my entire world since I was little. Always found myself caring for some creature or another, which led me to where I am now. It was a cool, crisp evening when James walked into one of my charity events. He was there to write a story, standing awkwardly by the side, holding his notepad like a shield. I walked over, breaking into his space with a smile and a hand stretched out. Hey, I'm Amelia. Haven't seen you around here before. You new? He took my hand, a bit surprised, then flashed a quick, somewhat nervous smile. Yeah, James Mitchell. I'm covering this event for the local paper. You're Amelia Carter, right? The one who runs all this? Guilty as charged, I chuckled, brushing a stray hair from my face. Hope we're giving you something good to write about. Oh, definitely. His eyes scanned the room, filled with volunteers and the happy chaos of an event in full swing. This is impressive, what you've put together. Thanks. We're all about giving back. Plus, I can't stand seeing animals in trouble. You got pets? He shook his head. Travel too much. Wouldn't be fair to the poor thing. We chatted more about the event, and he asked insightful questions that told me he did his homework. His genuine interest was refreshing, and as the night wore on, I found myself looking forward to his calls and texts. Fast forward 6 months, and we're standing under a simple yet elegant arch, exchanging vows. I remember thinking how wild it was that life could throw such good things my way when I least expected it. A year into the marriage, and my business was booming. The house felt even more alive with every stray I brought home. James, ever the intrepid journalist, kept bringing stories of his travels into our conversations, making our dinners lively and full of laughter. One night, I was closing up shop when a lady rushed in, just as I was about to turn the sign to closed. She was clutching a cardboard box so tightly her knuckles were white. Excuse me, are you Amelia? She gasped, out of breath. Yeah, that's me. What's up? She thrust the box into my hands. Found these kittens behind my house. I can't take care of them, but I heard you could help. Peeking into the box, I saw 4 tiny, mewling kittens, their eyes barely open. I got them, don't worry. They'll be safe here. Thank you so much. She looked relieved, almost on the verge of tears. I just didn't know what else to do. After she left, I settled the kittens into a warm blanket in the back, ensuring they were comfortable. That night, as I told James about them, he just shook his head in wonder. You ever gonna say no? He joked, pouring us both a glass of wine. Not when it comes to this. You know that. After the wedding, life started spinning faster than I ever imagined. The business was booming, and James's career as a journalist was on the rise. Every piece he wrote seemed to turn to gold, and his trips became more frequent. Despite the hectic pace, the day we found out I was pregnant was the day everything else seemed to pause, just for a moment. The positive test was like a beacon, cutting through the fog of our daily grind. "James, we're going to be parents," I murmured, my heart hammering in my chest as he swept me into his arms. "Yeah, babe, we are," he whispered back, his eyes bright with something like wonder. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Morning sickness hit me hard, and running the store became a daily challenge. James was supportive, always popping in when he could, bringing me ginger tea and those little crackers that were the only thing I could stomach some days. When Lily was born, it felt like a storm had passed, leaving the world shiny and new. But complications during the delivery cast long shadows. The doctors said I couldn't have more kids, a blunt statement that hung heavy between James and me in the sterile silence of the hospital room. James's disappointment was a quiet thing, but it stretched wide and deep. He tried to hide it, but sometimes I'd catch him staring out the window with a far-off look, or he'd be unusually quiet during dinner. "James, talk to me. Please," I'd plead, reaching for his hand across the table. "I'm fine, Mel, really. Just tired, you know?" But his voice would be flat, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. When Lily turned 1, it was clear she was the light of my life. She had my eyes and James's easy smile. Teaching her to walk, to say her first words, it was a joy unlike any other. But James, he was there but not really. He'd smile and play with her, but his smiles didn't quite reach his eyes. Lately, James had started taking more business trips alone and was often late coming home from work. This shift left me with quieter evenings, which I spent nurturing Lily. She was my little ray of sunshine in the increasingly gray days of my marriage. At just 5, she was already reading children's books and even little notes I left around, which I wrote to spark her curiosity and love for learning. Our bond was my solace. As for James and me, our relationship had cooled considerably. He had taken to sleeping in another room, claiming he needed to get up early for work without disturbing me. My attempts at conversation, trying to bridge the widening gap between us, were met with curt responses or tired dismissals. It was past midnight when I was jolted awake by Lily, her small hands shaking me urgently. Her face was lit with a mix of fear and excitement as she tugged at my arm. "Mommy, come quick. There's a baby outside, I couldn't bring him in, he's too heavy," she blurted out, breathless from either the run up the stairs or the weight of her discovery. I was half in a dream, not fully grasping her words. "A baby? Lily, it's probably just your imagination. Let's get you back to bed." But she was insistent, pulling me with more strength than I thought her little hands could muster. "No, Mommy, he's real. I saw him at the front door." Reluctantly, I followed her down the stairs, my mind racing. At the door, there it was, undeniable and shocking. A baby boy, wrapped snugly but abandoned in a portable cradle right on our doorstep. This was a first for me. I'd taken in countless strays, but a child? Lily was peering into the cradle with a curious gaze. "Look, Mommy, it's a boy. He's my brother." I knelt beside the cradle, my heart sinking. "Lily, sweetheart, this isn't our baby. Someone must have left him here by mistake." But Lily was persistent, her small face serious as she said, "No, Mom, there was a note. It said he's Daddy's son, so he's my brother." Before I could respond, James appeared, his face unreadable in the dim porch light. "What's all this?" he asked, his voice tinged with a forced casualness that didn't sit right with me. Lily was quick to answer, "Daddy, it's your baby. The note said so." James let out a stiff, uneasy chuckle. "You must have dreamt that, kiddo. There was no note." Lily's brow furrowed, frustrated. "There was. But now it's gone." James's eyes met mine, something fleeting in his glance that I couldn't place. He turned to Lily, his tone firm, almost harsh. "It's late, Lily. Go to bed now. We'll sort this out." "But Daddy." "Lily, bed. Now," James interrupted, pointing sternly towards the stairs. Lily, crestfallen and muttering, trudged back upstairs. I turned to James, my voice low and urgent. "We need to call the police, James. This is serious. We can't just keep someone's child." He was quick to dismiss me, his whisper sharp. "Let's not overreact. We could take him in, couldn't we? After all, it's a boy, just what we wanted." His words stunned me, the implication chilling. "James, are you listening to yourself? This is a child, not a stray pup that wandered in. We're talking to the police." His face darkened, and he stepped closer. "No police. We're not involving them. I'm going to bed." Once James retreated to his room, I managed to calm the little one. As he slept, I carefully snipped a few locks of his hair, planning to get a DNA test done. This wasn't a decision I took lightly, but my gut told me it was necessary. The next morning, I acted like everything was normal. I watched as James left for work, his demeanor unreadable. Once he was gone, I called the police. They came and took the baby to ensure he was cared for properly. That evening, when James returned and discovered what I had done, he exploded in anger, making a huge scene. "Why would you call them? We could have handled this ourselves," he yelled, his face red with frustration. His reaction only deepened my suspicions. I kept my calm, though, not letting on how much I already suspected. "It's the right thing to do, James. That child could have a family looking for him," I said, trying to reason with him. His responses were evasive, spinning more questions in my mind. I decided then to reach out to a private detective. Meanwhile, I also realized we might need money for all these expenses, lawyers, detectives, who knew what else. So, I checked our joint bank account. My heart sank when I saw it nearly empty. $30,000, saved for Lily's education, gone. I confronted James over the phone. "Where's the money from our account?" "The $30,000? I asked, my voice firm, trying not to let the anger show. "Oh, that. I had to help my brother out, he was in some serious debt," James stammered, his explanation sounding rehearsed. Right then, I knew he was lying. Not wanting to show my hand just yet, I simply replied, "I see." But internally, I was seething. This confirmed my decision to hire the detective. With my personal savings, I took the baby's hair and some from James's comb to a clinic for DNA testing. The process was straightforward, but waiting for the results was agonizing. During that time, I tried to keep things normal at home, especially for Lily's sake, but the atmosphere was tense. 2 weeks later, I received the call from the clinic. The results were as I feared, the child was indeed James's son. I said nothing to James, waiting instead for the detective's report to see the full picture. A week after getting the DNA results, I met with the detective. James had an affair with a woman who then gave birth to his son. They had planned to be a family until she met someone wealthier and decided to abandon the child with James, disrupting her new plans. The detective explained everything in a low, even tone, but each word was a hammer to my heart. "Once she found the other guy, your husband's son became inconvenient. That's why the baby ended up on your doorstep." With the address from the private detective in hand, I drove to the mistress's apartment, a mix of anger and disbelief churning inside me. The whole ride there, I kept thinking about the baby, about James, and about the betrayal that had unfolded so shockingly. When I arrived, I didn't even hesitate at the door. I knocked sharply, my heart pounding in my chest. The door swung open, and there he was, James, looking like he'd seen a ghost. The color drained from his face when he saw me. "What are you doing here, Amelia?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I pushed past him into the apartment, my eyes quickly finding the woman who had turned my life upside down. She was as I imagined, only now wearing a panicked look as she saw me. "I'm not here to cause a scene," I said, my voice cold and steady. "I just want to know one thing. How could you leave a baby, your baby, alone on the street like that?" The mistress, her back stiffening, responded with a shrug that made my skin crawl. "I didn't want the child. James wanted a son, so I left him with you guys to raise." Her nonchalance about the whole thing infuriated me, but before I could reply, the doorbell rang. She looked visibly shaken, moving quickly to answer it. A man entered, confusion written all over his face. "Who are these people, Julia?" he asked, his tone cautious. Julia, the mistress, forced a nervous laugh. "Oh, they're just some friends. They were just leaving." But I couldn't let this go, not now. I stepped forward, meeting the eyes of the man who clearly expected a different kind of evening. "I'm James's wife, and this is our life she's been meddling with. She left her newborn with us because she thought she could get rid of the baby that easily when she found you," I said, the words bitter as they came out. The man, now pale, turned to Julia. "Is this true?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, no lies coming to her aid this time. The man's face hardened as he looked from her to James and then back to me. "I want no part of this," he said, and without another word, he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the hall. James tried to reach for me, his hands outstretched, pleading. "Amelia, please, I can explain. There's nothing you can say that will fix this. I'm filing for divorce." I cut him off, my voice trembling not just with anger, but with a profound sadness. Julia's eyes were on James now. "Don't leave me, not now. We can be a family, with our son," she begged, desperation coloring her every word. The cynicism of her plea, the ease with which she shifted her allegiances, it was all too much. I turned to James, my decision clear. "I can't do this anymore." Without waiting for his response, I left the apartment. My next stop was the police station. I filed a formal complaint against James's mistress for abandoning her child, an act that endangered his safety. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic, but his face was etched with the seriousness of the situation. From there, I went directly to the custody service. I argued fervently that the mistress should be stripped of her maternal rights. The caseworker assigned to the case took notes intently as I spoke. "We'll need to conduct a thorough investigation. It will take time," she explained. "I understand, but please consider the child's safety above all," I urged, the image of the abandoned baby still vivid in my mind. Feeling like I had started a necessary process, I then turned my attention to the impending legal battle with James. I contacted a lawyer, one recommended by my best friend who had gone through her own divorce. The lawyer, Mr. Green, was a stout man with a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately made me feel I was in capable hands. "We'll need a strong strategy, especially if you're seeking financial compensation and custody," Mr. Green said during our first meeting. "I want to ensure my daughter's future is secure, and I want back every penny James took from our joint account," I declared, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Mr. Green nodded, jotting down notes. "The total amount withdrawn was $30,000, I answered. "He used our savings, money that was meant for our daughter's education, for the needs of his mistress. That's a substantial sum. We'll also pursue alimony, given his lack of interest in co-parenting, and compensation for adultery," Mr. Green added, already flipping through his calendar for court dates. The legal proceedings that followed were lengthy and grueling. In court, James and his mistress were defensive, their behavior erratic. The judge frequently reprimanded them for their conduct, which ranged from interruptive outbursts to outright disrespect. On one particularly tense day in court, after James had tried to explain away his actions with feeble excuses, I had my turn to speak. "Your Honor, he not only betrayed our family but also mismanaged our finances, jeopardizing our daughter's future," I stated clearly, meeting the judge's gaze. "I seek full restitution and appropriate alimony to provide for her upbringing." When the final gavel came down, it was a relief. The judge awarded me the full $139,000, citing the clear financial misconduct and James's lack of participation in parenting. He also granted me custody of Lily, with James required to pay alimony. The money, when it finally came through, was immediately set aside for Lily's education. It wasn't just a victory in court, it was a promise to my daughter that I would always fight for her, no matter what. One crisp morning, I sat down with Lily at our kitchen table, her small fingers clumsily spreading jam on her toast. She looked up at me with those big, curious eyes, her brow furrowed in thought. "Mommy, why don't we see Daddy anymore?" she asked, her voice soft and uncertain. I paused, considering how to explain the complexities of adult problems to a child whose world shouldn't have to include such worries. Well, honey, sometimes people need a little time apart to understand how to be the best they can be. I started, trying to keep my tone light but honest. It doesn't mean Daddy doesn't love you. Lily nodded, taking this in. Do you still love Daddy? The question stung a little, not out of pain for James, but for the innocence Lily still held. I'll always care about him, because he's your dad. But sometimes love changes, and that's okay. A year after everything came crashing down, life finally seemed to find a rhythm again. Lily and I had settled into our new reality. The store was thriving, and the community around us had rallied in ways I'd never imagined, supporting both our business and our spirits. Then, one sunny afternoon, I received a call that would change the course of our lives once more. It was from the custody service. The news was heavy. My ex-husband's mistress had been stripped of her parental rights, and shockingly, James hadn't stepped in to take his son, despite all his previous claims of wanting a boy to carry on his name. The little boy was placed in an orphanage. My heart broke hearing that. No child should have to go through such abandonment. I talked to Lily about it that evening. Lily, you remember the little boy we found on our doorstep? Your brother? I started, unsure how to approach the topic. Yeah, Mommy. Is he okay? Her small face was filled with concern. I sighed, gathering my thoughts. He's in an orphanage, sweetheart. His mom can't take care of him, and your dad, he isn't there for him either. Lily looked thoughtful for a moment, then her expression hardened with resolve. Can he come live with us? He's my brother. Her innocence and compassion were overwhelming. Would you like that? I asked, although her mind seemed made up. Yes, I want to help him. He's family, right? Her certainty made up my mind. The next day, I contacted the custody service to inquire about the process of adopting him. The paperwork was daunting, the road filled with legal intricacies, but the thought of that little boy alone in the world propelled me forward. The months that followed were a whirlwind. I visited the orphanage regularly, each time my heart aching at the sight of so many children without families. James's son, Ben, was a quiet, watchful child. Each visit, he grew more accustomed to me. One afternoon, as I was leaving, he tugged at my hand, his small voice calling after me. Mommy, will you come back? His words struck a chord deep within me. Always, Ben. I'll always come back for you. It took 6 months of visits, meetings, and countless signatures before I got the call. The adoption was approved. I was overjoyed and terrified all at once. I rushed to the orphanage to tell Ben the news. When I arrived, he was playing in the yard, his little figure dwarfed by the big toys around him. As I approached, he spotted me and ran over, his small arms lifted in anticipation. I scooped him up, spinning him around. Guess what, Ben? You're coming home with us. You're going to be my son and Lily's brother for real, I told him, my voice thick with emotion. Bringing Ben home felt like mending a piece of my heart I hadn't realized was still broken. Lily embraced her role as big sister with a fierce tenderness that only a child could muster. Watching them together, playing, arguing, and just being siblings, filled the house with a chaotic but joyous energy. Ben started school this year, and watching him head off with his backpack almost as big as he is, it fills me with pride. He's adjusted well, and his teachers all say he's a joy to have in class. Lily, ever the protective big sister, always checks on him during their school breaks, making sure no one picks on him. Running the pet store keeps me busy. It's more than just a job, it's a passion. I've expanded our services, hosting community events, and even starting a small adoption center in the back. Watching families come in and leave with a new pet, knowing they're going to a good home, it's incredibly rewarding. As for James, I haven't seen him since the divorce was finalized. I heard through the grapevine he's moved out of state after losing his job and breaking things off with his mistress. Part of me is curious about how he's managing, but mostly, I don't want any part of that drama anymore. My focus is here, with our children, with our life. The other day, Lily and I were repainting the kitchen, a project we decided to tackle together. Ben was at a friend's house, so it was just us girls, splattering paint and sharing laughs. Mom, do you ever miss things being the way they were before? Lily asked, her brush pausing mid-stroke. I considered her question, paint can in hand. Sometimes, I guess. But I love our life now, don't you? She dipped her brush in the paint. Yeah. It's better now. Ben's here, and we're happy. It's just different, that's all. Different can be good, sweetheart. We've gotten through a lot, and here we are, stronger than ever. I reassured her, giving her a playful nudge with my elbow. Later that week, I had a meeting with the local animal shelter about partnering for an upcoming adoption event. After the meeting, as I was closing up for the day, I took a moment to look around at the life I'd built. From the bustling store filled with customers and their pets, to the community notices pinned up next to the register, to the photos of Lily and Ben at their latest school event. This was my world now, and it was a good one. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the floor of the shop, I locked up and headed home, ready to spend the evening with my kids, maybe watch a movie or play a game. Life had thrown us some curveballs, but here we were, catching every one and throwing them right back. Hi, I'm Hannah. Growing up, I had everything a kid could want, loving parents and a cozy home. I was their only kid, and they spoiled me with love, not just stuff. They were big on education too, so after high school, I headed off to college and then landed a job as a travel agent. For over a decade, I hustled at a city travel agency, learning the ropes of the trade. After my folks passed, they left me a bit of money. Nothing crazy, but enough to make me think about starting my own thing. That's how I ended up opening my own travel agency. It was tough in the beginning, like, really tough. I had to scrape and claw for every client I got. But I made it work, and soon enough, the agency started doing alright, even thinking about expanding. I always believed in looking sharp, especially at work and public events. You never know who you're gonna meet, right? So, there I was, a regular at this little salon on the corner of my street, getting my hair done by Marie, a sweet woman in her 60s with hands of magic. We'd chat about everything, my business, her salon, the latest gossip. One day, Marie got all excited while she was washing my hair. You know, Hannah, I've got a son, Mark. Such a handsome guy, and smart too. But still single. You should meet him. I was a bit taken aback, but went along with it. Sure, why not? Could be fun. She beamed. Great. I'll set something up. Fast forward, and I'm sitting across from Mark at a cozy little diner downtown. He was cute, alright, and had a way with numbers, working as a financial expert or something fancy like that. We hit it off, talking about everything from our favorite movies to our crazy work schedules. You gotta have some crazy stories with a job like yours. Yeah, there's never a dull moment, that's for sure. What about you? Any crazy stock market stories? I sipped my coffee, watching his face light up, talking about his day-to-day. Nothing too wild. It's mostly numbers and grumpy old men, Mark shrugged, grinning. But it pays the bills, and then some. We talked for hours, closing the place down. It was easy, comfortable. And just like that, Marie's matchmaking wasn't such a bad idea after all. After Mark and I got hitched, things took a turn. The wedding was a blast, full of laughter and dancing, but the next day it was like I woke up next to a different person. Well, not Mark, he was still the laid-back guy I fell for, but his mom, Marie, she flipped a switch or something. We were having breakfast, just a couple of days after the ceremony, when Marie dropped the bomb. Hannah, darling, you and Mark should really think about getting a bigger place, you know? Something fitting for a growing family, she said, stirring her tea a bit too vigorously. I choked on my coffee a bit. A bigger place? We just got settled here. Mark chimed in, with that let's not start a fight look. Mom's got a point, Hannah. We could use the extra space. Maybe something with a yard? I gave him a look. Sure, I guess. We can start looking. But Marie wasn't just talking about any house. No, she wanted us to buy a huge place, like the kind you see in magazines. And the kicker? She wanted in. Not just as a visitor, but living with us. Hannah, think about it. If I moved in, I could help out around the house. I'm planning to leave the salon, start something fresh. I've been looking into blogging, maybe a lifestyle thing, you know? She was all excited, eyes shining. I tried to keep it cool, but inside, I was freaking out. Blogging, huh? That's interesting. But living together? That's a big step. Marie nodded eagerly. Exactly. And with my blog, once it takes off, I'll be more than able to contribute. The next thing I knew, I was nodding along, agreeing to house hunt. We ended up with a gorgeous place, way beyond what I thought we needed, but it had that charm, you know? When I saw Marie's eyes light up, I thought, maybe this isn't so bad. Then came moving day. Marie had boxes and boxes of stuff, way more than Mark and I combined. As we unpacked, she directed traffic like a general. No, that box goes in the upstairs hall. And can you put those books in the guest room? It'll be my office. As the weeks went by, Marie's true colors showed. She'd taken over the house, redecorating without asking, and her helping out turned into giving orders. Hannah, I need you to pick up some things for my new blog setup. Oh, and we need better lighting in here, it's for the blog. I felt cornered, not just by the bills and the new house, but by this whole new family dynamic I hadn't signed up for. Alright, I guess. We'll look into it. Lying in bed that night, I turned to Mark. Do you really think all this is necessary? The house, your mom's blog? Mark was quick to reassure. It's all gonna work out, Hannah. Trust me, it's all part of settling in. Settling in, right. I signed up for a husband, not a housemate who doubled as my mother-in-law and lifestyle coach. I drifted off, wondering just how much of my new married life would be spent in the shadow of Marie's grand plans. Living with Marie and Mark was turning out to be tougher than I'd ever imagined. Mark's spending was off the charts. Almost every other day, he'd come home with something pricey, a new watch, some fancy shoes, or talking about his latest round at some upscale golf club. He even set aside a whole room just to store and display his collections of high-end watches and leather shoes. I tried to keep things chic, but affordable on my end, believing we weren't at the luxury splurge stage yet. This difference in our spending habits was becoming a regular source of friction between us. Mark, do we really need more watches? Maybe we should be saving a bit more, I said one evening as he unpacked yet another purchase. Hannah, I make good money. I should be able to enjoy it, he snapped, not looking up from his new shiny gadget. The conversation always ended there, with him shutting down any further discussion. Meanwhile, Marie was on a roll with her new blogging venture. It had started gaining traction faster than any of us expected. But with the fame, her demands grew too. One day, she came to me with a request, or more accurately, a demand that took me by surprise. Hannah, darling, I've been thinking. To keep up with my blog's image, I need to get some work done. A facelift, maybe tweak my nose a bit. You know, freshen up, Marie announced as if discussing the weather. I was flabbergasted. Marie, that sounds expensive. And cosmetic surgery? Are you sure? She was all smiles. Oh, absolutely. It's an investment in my career. And you know, being in the public eye now requires looking my best. I frowned. But that's a lot of money, Marie. Money that could go to our household needs. Marie's tone shifted, turning sharper. Hannah, you know how much this blog means to me. It's finally something of my own. I thought you, of all people, would understand. I was about to protest when she played her card. Besides, it's not just for me. It benefits all of us, doesn't it? And I'd hate for any misunderstandings to crop up between you and Mark because you weren't supportive. Her implication was clear: help her out, or she'd stir trouble with Mark. Knowing how she could influence him, I felt my hands were tied. Despite my reservations, I agreed to finance her procedures. Marie underwent the surgery, and it was all she could talk about afterward. Her blog posts about embracing plastic surgery, not fearing the knife, and the importance of looking good raked in more views and comments than ever before. She was proud, reveling in the attention and praise, while I watched our bank account dwindle and wondered if I'd ever be able to pull us back from this spending spiral. 2 years into our marriage, and it felt like I was the only one truly pulling weight around here. My travel agency had really taken off, and I was proud to say that I was the main breadwinner. Not only did I handle all our bills, but I also paid our mortgage all by myself. Day in and day out, I juggled work, home, and everything in between. At night, I'd cook meals tailored to Marie's special diet, keeping the household running smoothly. To anyone looking from the outside, my life with Mark and his mother Marie looked picture perfect. Marie never missed a chance to gush about our wonderful family life and the beautiful home on her blog, painting a pretty picture for her followers. However, the reality inside our walls was a bit different, especially when it came to Marie's latest obsession, her live streaming. One Tuesday morning, this reality came crashing in during one of her broadcasts. I was in the middle of preparing a dietary breakfast for Marie when she decided it was the perfect time to put me on the spot. The kitchen was bustling, Marie with her phone out, capturing every mundane detail for her followers. And here's the star of the house, my wonderful daughter-in-law, Hannah, Marie announced, thrusting her phone in my direction as I was halfway through flipping an omelet. "Morning, everyone," I said, managing a tight smile, not wanting to drop the omelet in front of the live audience. "Hannah here is the best when it comes to travel. Tell us, dear, what's the latest in the world of travel?" Marie chirped, the camera focusing on me. Clearing my throat, I set down the spatula. "Well, there are some exciting travel deals coming up, especially for those looking to escape the winter chill." Marie's eyes sparkled with an idea, and she leaned closer, her voice a pitch too cheerful. "Speaking of travel, Hannah, why don't you share with our lovely viewers your fabulous idea for our next family vacation?" I believe South Africa was mentioned? I was blindsided. South Africa? I echoed, my mind racing. This wasn't just an impromptu Q&A, this was Marie setting the stage for something much bigger. Yes, a luxury trip to South Africa. Safari tours, 5-star hotels, the works. Viewers, wouldn't you just love to see us on safari? I'm sure Hannah can arrange something spectacular. Her followers immediately chimed in with excitement, their comments flooding the live feed. Pressure mounted as I tried to keep my composure. "Well, it's definitely an option," I said, trying to stay non-committal. "But let's discuss it later, off camera." As soon as Marie ended the stream, I turned to her, frustration bubbling over. "Marie, we need to talk about this. You can't just plan things and announce them without discussing them with me first, especially not live." Marie was unflappable as ever, sipping her coffee. "Oh, lighten up, Hannah. It's good for the blog. And good for your business too, don't you think?" "It's not about the blog," I pushed back, feeling cornered. "It's about respecting each other's roles in this family. You can't use your followers to pressure me into decisions." I left the room, leaving Marie to make her far-reaching plans. That evening, things escalated when she complained to Mark. She spun the story, painting me as rude and dismissive of her ideas, claiming I was getting too big for my boots. Mark stormed into the kitchen where I was cleaning up. His face was thunderous. "Hannah, we need to talk. Now." He didn't wait for my response, just marched into the living room and I followed, my stomach in knots. He spun around, his words sharp as knives. "Mom tells me you're disrespecting her ideas, acting like you're the one who calls all the shots. That's not how we're supposed to work as a family." I was taken aback, the unfairness of the accusation stinging. "Mark, that's not true. I've always supported your mom, but..." But nothing, Hannah. You know how important her blog is to her. And if you can't support us, maybe you shouldn't be part of this family. He interrupted, his voice cold. The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I tried to reason with him, to explain my side, but he was having none of it. I've even prepared divorce papers, Hannah. I keep them just in case you decide not to follow through with our plans. The words felt like a slap. I spent the night in our guest room, crying, feeling more alone than ever. The idea that Mark would keep such a thing ready was heartbreaking. The next morning, still reeling from the night's threats, I felt a wave of nausea that wouldn't pass. It was more than stress, something was off. I called in sick at work and made my way to the doctor's office, the weight of the world on my shoulders. Sitting in the sterile doctor's office, I was going through the motions, answering questions mechanically until the doctor gave me the news that shifted everything. "You're pregnant," he said, looking at me over his glasses. Pregnant. The word echoed in my mind, a beacon of hope in the turmoil of my marital strife. At 37, this was a moment I had hoped for, but never let myself believe would happen. Despite the chaos at home, this news filled a space in my heart with pure joy. I went home, a plan forming. Maybe this baby was a sign, a reason to mend fences. I found Mark in the office, his demeanor still frosty. "Mark, I went to the doctor today," I started, my voice steady, despite the shaking inside. He looked up, wary. And we're going to have a baby," I said, letting the words hang in the air. The change in Mark was instantaneous. His face softened, the edges of anger smoothing out. He stood up, coming over to wrap me in his arms. "Really? That's great, Hannah. I'm sorry about last night. Things will be different now." Relief washed over me, mingled with caution. But there was work to be done if I was going to keep this family together. In a move to bridge the gap, I took the initiative to plan the trip to South Africa that Marie had so publicly put on the agenda. I threw myself into the arrangements, booking excursions to Cape Town and Johannesburg, a safari in a national reserve, and trips to both a desert and lush waterfalls. The trip to South Africa was supposed to be a fresh start, a way to mend the growing rifts at home. Instead, it spiraled into a disaster from the very start. As soon as we boarded the plane, Marie began complaining about everything, the length of the flight, the turbulence, and even the meals served on board. "It's way too long. How could you book such an uncomfortable flight, Hannah?" Marie grumbled as another wave of turbulence shook the cabin. Trying to keep my tone even, I replied, "Marie, it's the shortest route available. There's nothing I can do about the flight duration or the turbulence." Her complaints didn't let up, and by the time we landed, I was already exhausted. But that was just the beginning. At the hotel, Marie's dissatisfaction found new targets. The moment we checked in, she started on about the hotel not living up to its online reputation. "This place? This is where we're staying? I expected something far better, given the pictures online. Hannah, are you sure this is the right hotel?" she criticized loudly as we stood at reception. Mark, as always, was quick to back her up. "Yeah, Hannah, Mom's got a point. It doesn't look like what we saw on the website." Feeling the sting of their joint disapproval, I managed to say, "This is one of the best-rated hotels in the area. I'm sorry it's not what you expected, but let's try to make the best of it." Despite my efforts to keep things positive, Marie's and Mark's displeasure only deepened. Marie found fault with every aspect of the hotel, from the service to the food, and Mark echoed her every sentiment. It didn't help that I was feeling increasingly unwell, the early stages of my pregnancy making it hard to keep up with the demanding schedule of tours and activities I had planned. The tipping point came after yet another day of excursions that neither of them enjoyed. Marie summoned me to her room for a serious talk. The moment I entered, she launched into a tirade. "Hannah, you are by far the worst travel specialist I've ever seen. You've completely ruined our trip," she accused, her voice sharp and cold. Stunned, I tried to defend my efforts. "Marie, I've arranged everything according to what we discussed. I'm trying my best here." But she wasn't having any of it. Grabbing my arm, she nearly shouted, "Get out of here, Hannah. Stop ruining our vacation." Before I could react, she pushed me out and slammed the door. Shaken, I returned to my room, only to find my suitcase outside the door. Mark was there, his expression hard and unsympathetic. "I can't deal with this anymore, Hannah. You being sick all the time, it's too much. I think it's best if you leave," he said, his voice void of the warmth I once knew. Feeling a mix of disbelief and heartbreak, I picked up my suitcase. Without a word, I left the hotel. I felt incredibly unwell, my body and mind pushed to their limits. At that moment, all I wanted was to be back in the safety of my own home in the USA. The flight back was agonizing. Every turbulence shook me not just physically, but also emotionally, my stomach churning with pain and distress. I landed back home with a sharp ache that seemed to gnaw deeper with each passing moment. Instead of the comfort of home, my first stop was the emergency room. The diagnosis confirmed my worst fears. I had suffered a miscarriage. As I lay there, trying to process the loss, my phone lit up with countless missed calls from Mark and Marie. With a heavy heart, I called back, only to be thrust into another chaotic situation. Marie's voice crackled through the line, frantic and demanding. "Hannah, it's all gone wrong here. We've been robbed, our documents, our money, everything. And it's gotten even worse," she blurted out, barely pausing for breath. Trying to steady my voice, I asked, "What happened, Marie?" She continued, her voice tinged with panic. "We were out, and I was filming for my blog, just a normal day, when someone snatched our bags. And when I complained about it to the hotel staff, they were so rude, I had to tell them off. They called the police on us, and now we're in jail. You have to help us, Hannah." Her words swirled in my head, piling onto the mountain of stress I was already under. "Marie, I'm in the hospital," I said, my voice breaking. "I've had a miscarriage." There was a brief silence on the line. Then Mark's voice came through, his tone anger and impatience. "It doesn't matter, Hannah, we really need you right now. This is serious, we could be stuck here." The lack of sympathy, the sheer audacity to dismiss my pain so quickly, it was like a slap in the face. "I'm not going to help you. Handle it yourselves." Without waiting for a response, I hung up, a mix of anger, sorrow, and disbelief coursing through me. In that lonely hospital room, as I grieved the child I would never hold, I made a silent vow to myself. I would start anew, rebuild, and never let my sense of self be compromised again. The day I was discharged from the hospital marked the start of my new life. I went straight home to finalize the severance of my ties to Mark and Marie. With a steady hand, I signed the divorce papers that Mark had prepared earlier. Afterward, I gathered every item that belonged to him and his mother, clothes, personal belongings, the countless shoes, and watches that had filled our space with the excess of their lives. Everything was packed up and delivered to their cramped old apartment in the city. With that chapter closed, I took the next step. I sold the house I had bought with my hard-earned money, the house that was meant to be a home for us but never truly felt like one. Selling it was freeing, not just from the mortgage and the memories, but from the life I was so desperately trying to fit into. 2 months passed, and Mark and Marie were deported back from South Africa, arriving with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a phone in their hands. Their shock was palpable when they found strangers living in their home. The new owners, uninterested in their plight, threatened to call the police if they didn't clear off their property. Marie's voice was shaking with fury when she called me. "Hannah, what the hell is going on? Where are all our things? Why are strangers in our house?" I replied with a calm I hardly felt. "Marie, the house was mine. I paid for it, and it was in my name. I've sold it. All your things are in your old apartment. As for Mark and you, I'm done. We're divorced. I won't be dragged back into your chaos." There was a pause, the kind that told me she was struggling to grasp her new reality. "You can't do this to us, Hannah. We have rights," she insisted. "I've done everything by the book, Marie. You're going to have to accept that. Goodbye." Hanging up the phone felt like shedding a heavy coat in the middle of summer, sudden and immensely relieving. The news eventually came to me through mutual acquaintances that Marie had returned to her job as a hairstylist. Her dreams of blog stardom abandoned alongside her expensive camera equipment. Mark, unable to resume his old job due to his long absence, resorted to driving a taxi. He sold his precious watch collection and wore plain, unbranded clothing. As for me, I moved into a small house on the outskirts of the city. Here, I began rebuilding not just my home but my travel agency as well. The expo was a turning point. People were genuinely interested, and their enthusiasm reignited my own. Your tours always have that personal touch. How do you do it? A curious visitor asked, her eyes scanning the brochures. It's all about understanding what the traveler wants. You listen, adapt, and sometimes, take a leap of faith, I explained, the conversation flowing easily. The expo was more than a success, and before long, I was planning expansions, considering even a potential branch in Europe. One evening, after a long day of meetings, I stopped by a small cafe, a little celebration of my progress. As I sipped my coffee, a young couple at the next table was poring over travel brochures, looking utterly confused. "Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear. Are you planning a trip?" I asked, the remnants of my shyness about intruding quickly swept away by my enthusiasm. "Yes, but we're so lost. It's our first big trip together, and we want it to be perfect," the woman said, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and frustration. I smiled, pulling out a business card. "Here, give me a call tomorrow at this number. I'll help you sort it out. Travel's supposed to be fun, not stressful." They thanked me profusely, their smiles wide and genuine. It felt good to be able to help, to use my expertise to make someone's experience better. It reminded me why I loved this job in the first place.